Welcome to the Why Didn't I Know podcast. This is episode 30, and we are talking about women being the answer for the future of humanity. What do I mean by that? What I mean is multiple prophecies showing that there is a destined future for women to lead the consciousness on the planet. There is a book on the prophecies of Nostradamus. If you're not familiar with him, he lived in the 15th century, and he wrote in sort of cryptic terms a whole myriad of different events that he predicted would happen in the future. The reason why he wrote in such kind of cryptic language is that he didn't want it to be apprehended by the authorities of the day and his work shut down. So he wrote in this kind of coded language that people have been working to decode ever since then. But he predicted the collapse of the Twin Towers in 9/11, the rise of Hitler, the assassination of JFK. He has definitely provided evidence that he was tapping into an awareness. And one of the things that he tapped into was an awareness that women will rise up, not to dominate humanity, but to really bring a new level of consciousness and awareness to the planet. And it's really hard to put dates on this stuff because he was writing so long ago, but he knew that that was a future. Interestingly enough, a person completely separate from Nostradamus is the inventor, the brilliant man named Nikola Tesla, who had this same revelation. He was not a prophetic person. He was actually a scientist and inventor, invented over 700 different brilliant breakthrough inventions, and provided the basis of the cell technology that we still use today. He was a real forward thinker and a brilliant man who seemed to almost download his inventions from another dimension. In an interview with him in Collier's magazine in 1936, he stated, and the article is entitled, "When Women is Boss." I'll link it down below this episode. He talked about that in nature, for instance, he mentioned the honeybees. There's a queen bee, and she reigns over all the honeybees. And there is a natural order and a natural symmetry that happens in the bee community, in the honeybee community. And he stated that this would be what would be beneficial for humanity. Now, what Nikola Tesla and also Nostradamus were tapping into is not something that has not been known. In ancient times, there have been cultures where women were in charge. Now, I'm not talking about dominating men, because very typically, when women do take that type of leadership power position, they typically don't do it to squash the other people around them. It's much more of an egalitarian system. Renee Eisler, she is still alive to my understanding. She's a historian and has written some amazing books on this very subject. The Chalice and the Blade is an excellent book to resource this whole idea of what it was like when women did hold the power and how that is the only way to restore society. For instance, technology is a powerful tool, but it can go in a very destructive way. It can be used in a very destructive way, or it can be used in a very beneficial way for humanity. Right now, we're on the precipice of technology fundamentally changing what it means to be human. There is the talk of transhumanism, and if you have never heard of that, look up someone by the name of Ray Kurzweil. He is the chief visionary for AI at Google, and he envisions in a very short order, in a decade or so, that we will all be merged with machines. There will be technological implants in us, and every baby born will have a brain chip in their head. And he says it's to make them more competitive in a very technologically advanced society. But what we need to understand is we're altering fundamentally what it means to be human, changing what it means to have an independent thought, changing what it means to have imagination, and changing what it means to feel emotion and be close to other people. I will venture to say, if there were women in charge in Silicon Valley, or in charge of making these decisions at the very highest levels in government, we would not have this kind of fundamentally changing of biology. It's almost as if there is an intention to actually erase gender, to erase women, and to play God. Now, why do I say that? Well, this version of transhumanism will change how we reproduce. There's already some predictive programming of that out there. There's a movie a while ago that showed people having babies, not in a mother's womb, but in a pod externally, so technologically reproduced, kind of like a dystopian Matrix movie. And so this is changing what it means to be human. And I do not believe, I may be too Pollyanna about this, but historically, if you look at some of Renee Eisler's work and so forth, there is a propensity for women to use the power for the beneficial use of all rather than for control. And when you understand what transhumanism is, what this new technology that's coming in is all about, and what is going to happen is it's going to be very hard to have a differing opinion and speak your mind if your thoughts are actually being controlled externally by a device that's not really, you're not ultimately in control of. Whoever produces the technology can flip a switch and cause you to think in a certain way. So what does that do to dissenting opinions? What does that do to people not wanting to go along with the group mentality? It really squashes that. And we do not see that in cultures that were egalitarian or cultures that were run by women. And so we're on the precipice of some really big changes in humanity. And having women reclaim their voices is so important. I mean, it's interesting. Back in, I think it was in 2016, there was the first robot actually attained citizenship in Saudi Arabia. That robot was named Sophia. Now, this Sophia robot went on talk shows and basically had the appearance, at least in the front, of a female. And her name was Sophia. Now, why is that important? Sophia has always been the name, especially in Western esoteric tradition, of the divine feminine, of the wisdom of the divine, and is a feminine, divine feminine. So to replace the intelligence with a artificial intelligence and to usurp the whole idea of Sophia is strategic. I mean, I also think about the fact that ISIS, if you Googled the word ISIS before the terrorist group claimed it as their own, you would see ISIS being a very powerful female deity in Egypt, and you would learn about that powerful female divine entity. But now if you Google ISIS, you are going to be immediately shown really dark images of terrorist group and learn about terrorism. It's a co-opting of the language, and it induces a certain forgetfulness, or even for younger people, they never even learn that ISIS was a very powerful female, and it was a religion. The religion of ISIS was very powerful. And let's just talk about, what are we losing when we lose Sophia as the original divine feminine and Isis, the original divine feminine? What we're losing is what they represented, and that was a fusion of science and religion known as alchemy. Alchemy shows up in early Christianity. Alchemy shows up in the religion of Isis. And alchemy is essentially what the transhumanist folks are working on inverting, a very distorted view of alchemy. So alchemy is not the Harry Potter alchemy that became famous and popular, but alchemy, if you really look into it as a profound science and art, I mean, Isaac Newton, the founder of modern science, wrote over 1 million words on alchemy that we didn't discover until after his death, when they got sold at an auction in Sotheby's in the 1930s. The reason why he was so interested in alchemy is because he knew that that's where the power lied. It wasn't just science divorced from religion, divorced from spiritual understanding. And it wasn't just spirituality without a powerful understanding of science. It was the merging of both. And what alchemy represented was the access to the substrate of matter, to the very fabric of space-time, to the aspect of our being that is not material, but is spiritual. And there's a science to that. And it represents not just our bodies, it represents the entire fabric of space-time. So there was a science called alchemy that had to do with being able to transform this basic substrate, the prima materia, this basic substance. And if you had access to that, you were basically had the powers to co-create with God. Now, the early alchemists believed in a higher power. They believed in God. And there was an honoring of a higher power. You do this in service of, with the will of God, whether you call God a woman or a man, but you do this in service of that God, of God. Now, the alchemy that we see in transhumanism has no God. And in fact, it completely inverts the principles of alchemy. So one of the principles of original alchemy is you work with nature, you don't manipulate nature. What alchemy in the transhumanist movement has become is nature is flawed. That's their belief in the transhumanism. Nature is flawed. It's weak. It's limited. And we need to bring in our man-made inventions, and they are man-made to a certain extent. There's a lot more men involved in this movement than very few women. And so to bring in these man-made inventions and to transmute what it means to be human by basically making a cyborg, by making us a version of humanity that has never existed before. That's transmutation, and that is alchemy. Alchemy is creating something new out of something that is current, transmuting the substance. But we were created by our Creator is to be able to transmute our own consciousness and to be less material and more of our ethereal body as we raise our vibration, raise our consciousness. And alchemy in the religion of Isis, in early Christianity, before some of the people like Augustine got involved and completely removed the idea of sex being the way to do this and remove the power of women. When women and sex were viewed as powerful in the 1st and 2nd century in Christianity, this alchemy was a path of resurrection, you could say. The Gospel of Philip says everyone needs to resurrect. What is it talking about? It's not talking about a physical death and suffering. It's talking about, and rebirth, it's talking about, if you read the coded language in the Gospel of Philip, for instance, it's talking about the bridal chamber. That is a metaphor for a sacred sexual ritual, a sacred sexual, and it's through love and pleasure, not through hanging on a cross and being tortured, that you get the breakthrough, that you get the rebirth. And it's not about having to leave your physical body in order to become a new creation. The Gospel of Philip very much says we're still in our physical body, but we see life anew. We look at life anew. Everything is transformed in front of us because we are accessing the world from a higher vibration, and it's a sacred sexual ritual that got us there. Well, in the transhumanism version of this, forget the sex. You won't even be having sex with another human in their dystopian idea. You will be hooking your body up to AI to get some kind of neurochemical excitement. It's not the transformational sex that we knew in these alchemical rituals. But it is the transformation, the rebirth in transhumanism has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with an externally imposed change that happens to your body to permanently alter it forever. And it will disconnect you from your connection to the divine, because the technology becomes God, and your access of being able to access other dimensions other than what's controlled by the technology, it's a false utopia that they're suggesting. Some of the figures like Peter Thiel and so forth are coming out saying, we are going to usher in a golden age with this technology. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like what every indigenous and even the Bible talks about in terms of a golden age, but it wasn't meant to be. We were outsourcing our divinity and outsourcing our transformation to a false god, to a machine. And what we need to realize is this power is within ourselves. It's an opportunity for us, especially as women, to use our own consciousness to choose what and discern what is right for us, and also to raise our frequency through spiritual practice, through sexual practice, so that we don't become as easily manipulated by all of the way that they're dressing up some of these different changes in society, making it sound very alluring and very seductive, you could say. So there's an opportunity that I believe the universe has made ready for women to take the reins and to step into more powerful positions for the good of all. And that's what I will leave you with today. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Take care.